Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted a sharper brain and to keep it that way for years to come, then do we have the Better Brain Solution show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Steven Maloney, physician, nutritionist, trained chef, author, and the creator of the #1 health program for public television, 30 Days to a Younger Heart. He's also the best-selling author of numerous books, including 10 Years Younger and his latest, The Better Brain Solution. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today. How to start now at any age to reverse and prevent insulin resistance in the brain, sharpen cognitive function, and avoid memory loss. That plus we'll talk about the power of chocolate, almonds and the amygdala, why you don't want cold feet when you sleep, medical school and the flute, beets and brothels, and what in the world you do not want to put in your yogurt. So welcome to the show, Steven. Are you ready to shine?
I am, Michael. I'm really delighted to be with you today.
Well, delighted to have you here, and a mighty woohoo for being on the show. So,
thank you.
Before we dive right into things, you're a heart guy. Why are you working on the brain?
Well, in my clinic for over 15 years, I measure how people age. I like to measure on the inside. Are they growing plaque? Is it shrinking? We look at nutrition and fitness and stress markers. We look for toxins, and we also measure brain health. So I've published extensively on what predicts is your artery plaque growing, shrinking, or staying the same. And lifestyle has a huge impact on that. And the very similar factors, the connection between the heart and the brain is just deeply interrooted and interwebbed and connected. So when we look at many of these things that are good for your heart, turns out they're really good for your brain. So we've published on which factors, which lifestyle choices you could take that give you better brain processing speed, better memory, be sharper, quicker, and more productive. And having published on that, clearly I want to share those results. And we have hundreds of patients who've actually improved their brain function. It's like someone gave them a faster computer. Literally, their brain's 25 to 30% sharper. So that's the data from my clinic. That's really what went into creating the Better Brain Solution. And, the good news is the same thing that's really good for your heart is going to be awesome for your brain.
Well, thank you so much for doing it. I think it is one of the most important things in medicine, in anything, because if we lose what's going on upstairs, we've got nothing. And on that note, I have a personal bias of why I'm so happy to have you on the show today. I just had a beautiful visit from my mom and dad. They're in their mid-70s, and I'm starting to see my dad's brain going through some changes, and I'm starting to get concerned.
Yeah.
And maybe so I have a bias in learning as much as I can, as fast as I can. The biggest question is, how do you train an old dog to do new tricks? Maybe we can start, though, by sharing what happened to your stepdad, if you don't mind.
Well, I've had my own, as a physician for 30 years, I've had plenty of patients I've helped with, and I've seen what it's like when people lose their memory. It's awful, to be honest. But I've also seen on a personal level, my stepfather, awesome guy. I encouraged my mom to marry this guy.
Cool.
Almost the day after he retired, he had chest pain. They took him to the hospital. They did a catheterization. They went up to his heart and looked at his heart, and they knocked off a huge piece of plaque, and he had a massive stroke, and he developed dementia like that. He was partially blind, didn't know where he was. He was lost, confused. Seeing what dementia is like when it's your family, okay, I have to admit that's different than seeing it in your patients. And what the experience for my mom, he wandered, lost, confused, 24/7, and it exhausted her. And when he finally came close to dying, I went to say goodbye, and he was like in a coma. And I sat down, I was going to give him a hug, and he sat up and said to me, "Don't let what happened to me happen to others." And I really took that seriously because when we look at dementia and how bad it is for people when they lose their cognitive performance, they lose their identity, they lose their hope, they don't know their family members, but worse, they even become a burden on the people they love. And nobody wants that. So the good news is I believe we can prevent most memory, at least 60% of memory loss, and probably up to 90% if we do everything right. And we can improve our brain function starting today and feel better at the same time.
Woohoo! And I want to dive into this, and I think my dad's early enough that we can do some reversal here. From my own perspective, I remember I was getting fuzzy if that's the right term, in my 30s, and I'd actually had several concussions. So I've had several minor brain injuries.
All right.
And I was getting short-term memory loss, running into the kitchen. I'm getting... Dang it. and
why am I in the kitchen? What did I come for?
It was getting pretty interesting. Exactly. But with the changes we've made in our diet and our lifestyle, and with the show, which challenges me, I have to read a book a day, and I actually do read it. I am now at 47, the sharpest I have ever been, the best memory I have ever had.
Awesome.
If I played concentration, whatever, off the charts compared to where I ever was, even in grad school. So we can really change this almost at any age and completely change the picture, can't we?
You can. And the fact that you had a concussion means that you're at increased risk for memory loss. So one, it makes this program much more important for you. I mean, in other words, your brain is more susceptible to decline, but I'm convinced that we can prevent that.
All right. So first off, let's talk about then what is happening to our brains. Why are we declining? Perhaps why are we declining or getting conditions like Alzheimer's now more than ever?
You're absolutely right, Michael. It is now more than ever. Rates are climbing very rapidly. In fact, we're looking at an epidemic of increased memory loss rates, Alzheimer's, dementia rates. It's projected to double, 200% increase in just next to 12 to 15 years. So that's dramatic. And it's 50% of all baby boomers are high risk, and 30% of all adults are high risk. And the number one cause has to do with insulin resistance, which is really abnormal blood sugar control. Just slight elevations in blood sugar can have a dramatic negative impact on the brain.
So I was hypoglycemic for most of my life till I did some radical changes, which is what has tremendously helped the brain. Does that also cause some of the same long-term challenges, or am I in a better camp?
Yes.
All right. I get to keep up with this homework for the rest of my life. Why does blood sugar and why do conditions like diabetes and metabolic syndrome, why are these so harmful for the heart or for the brain?
Well, they're for the heart and the brain. The number one cause of heart disease is insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. The number one cause for memory loss today is insulin resistance and memories and metabolic syndrome. So here's how I like to clarify this with my patients. When we eat a high refined carb meal, sugar, bread, cereal, anything really with grain that's ground into flour or sugar, or even potatoes for that matter, our blood sugar levels tend to shoot up. And our insulin is the hormone that tries to push that energy into the cell and store it for the future. Like in your muscle cells, you store it as glycogen. But if you keep eating that way and you're not active enough, if you're following the SAD, standard American diet, you're eating a lot of refined carbs. Your sugar levels keep going up, and eventually the cells are they're full. You can't store any more energy, and they become resistant to insulin's message. But here's the irony. At the same time, we're getting fat, and our blood sugar levels are just starting to tweak up from high normal to barely elevated. The brain cells shut down. I mean, from what you've described, if I was to do a PET scan on your brain right now and give you problems to solve, I would expect your brain to light up like a brilliant lights, that all your cells in your brain are consuming energy and they're thinking and working. But if we take someone with insulin resistance and their sugar levels are starting to accumulate, the brain is dead quiet. You don't see any activity. It's unable to use energy when we're insulin resistant. That's part one. So it's this irony of sugar going up helps us gain fat, but it shuts our brain down so we can't use it. And we get brain fog and we're forgetful. And, we have trouble remembering things. The second part is, as your sugar goes up, your insulin goes up to match it. But the same enzyme that removes insulin removes beta amyloid. And beta amyloid is the protein the inflammatory, sticky protein we form with Alzheimer's disease. So if you're eating a lot of these refined carbs, you're also growing more beta amyloid and you're shutting down the function of your brain cells. And eventually those brain cells are just going to shrink and your brain's going to shrink. So 50% of baby boomers, 30% of all adults have insulin resistance. They're high risk for this. That's why we're seeing escalating rates of memory loss today. But the good news is we can stop this. We can prevent this and change that path.
Thank you. And I want to go into some of the risk factors at the moment. But what is the first true sign of memory loss? Like my dad was telling me, he's like, I'm not so good at remembering the short-term things anymore, although it's ironic. I can remember things 20, 30, 50 years ago to his childhood like they were yesterday.
Well, you just said it perfectly. Short-term memory loss and processing speed. How quick are we at recalling things and processing information so that your ability to problem solve drops and the short-term memory, what did you do today? Those are the first things that disappear with early memory loss. You know, again, it's like, why did I come in there in the kitchen? What was I looking for? Where's my phone? You're reading a passage in a book and you can't remember it. Someone asks you about something and you're trying to remember a name and you can't think of a name you used to really know. Those are all signs of brain dysfunction. If it happens rarely, that's okay. Maybe you just didn't sleep well last night. But if that's a regular occurrence, oh my gosh, that's a sign that you're shutting off the energy function of your brains, maybe growing extra beta amyloid. But again, we can stop that. We can change it. We can improve your brain function and change this whole process.
Fantastic. What are some of the key risk factors? And then let's start to dive into ways that we can change the brain. This is so important for people.
Well, you said a concussion. Yep. That's one. I would say number one, though, is elevated blood sugar levels and insulin resistance. That's at the top. So heart disease. If you have heart disease, you're much more likely to have your brain slow down and have more memory loss. So cardiovascular disease is a risk factor. Blood sugar is a risk factor. A concussion is a risk factor. Depression. People who have depression have depressed brain chemical function. If you have depressed brain chemical function, you're a setup for memory loss because you're not feeding and nourishing your brain the way it needs, and you're much more susceptible to that. When women go through menopause, there's a lot more changes in their brain structure, and they're more susceptible to memory loss. And then there's an ApoE4 genotype, which, one of the genetic testing that puts 20% of people at risk. Those are like the big risk factors that we're looking at today. And most of those we can either reverse or we can modify and do something about it.
How about things like inactivity and nutritional deficiencies?
So those are like, the standard American lifestyle is like a disaster. We're eating too much sugar. We don't meet the key nutrients we need to nourish our brain, and we're inactive. And that combination, that's what's killing us. That's what's giving us heart disease, memory loss, Alzheimer's disease. The good news is we can control most of this.
Woohoo! All right, so let's talk about this. First, let's talk about the 4 key elements of the Better Brain Solution, and then we'll break into each one of those.
Okay, so I would start, number 1 is food. What to eat, what to avoid. Number 2 are key nutrients we shouldn't miss.
Yeah.
Number 3 is activity. And I would actually say there's physical activity and mental activity as well.
Like it.
Number 4 is stress management, because that's critical. You can't do it without it. And 5 is there's some toxins that we should avoid.
Fantastic. So let's first talk about food, and let's talk about a few of the 12 smart foods. And I can dive into some specifically, or do you have some favorites that you want to mention?
Well, I would kind of put them in 3 groups just to make it simple for people listening. 1, there's plant pigments.
Yeah.
Things like green leafy vegetables. If you eat 1 cup of green leafy vegetables every day and you compare yourself to someone who has none, your brain would be 11 years younger. I mean, 11 years is a lot. So those green leafy veggies are just so important. It's insane not to try to get a cup every day. But all the vegetables and colorful vegetables and fruit are beneficial. Beets are fantastic. They increase blood supply to the brain. Berries, I love your blueberry picture there. We know that berries improve brain function and they help block beta amyloid formation. Cherries are another one. All those fruit and vegetable pigments, but other pigments as well, like dark chocolate and cocoa, green tea, and even coffee. But coffee has to be in moderation, 1 or 2 servings a day. Extra is not better; it's worse. So, in small amounts, 2 servings a day. Those pigments in coffee, even if it's decaf, are actually good for your brain. So, pigments are one. Number 2 is fat. I'm not suggesting a low-fat diet. I'm looking at smart fats for your brain. They did this very important study where they randomized people to either a low-fat diet or a Mediterranean-like diet with more olive oil or more nuts. Those on the low-fat diet, they had an increased rate of Alzheimer's disease and memory loss and decreased brain performance. When they gave them nuts or olive oil, their brain performance went up, and their cognitive decline went down. Clearly, we're not recommending a low-fat diet. So nuts, extra virgin olive oil, avocado. One of my favorite cooking oils is avocado oil because it's really tasteful, delicious.
That's what we cook with.
It takes high heat. You don't damage it with cooking at medium-high heat. So it's a great cooking oil. Dark chocolate's another smart fat and a pigment. And then all those long-chain omega-3 fats we get from seafood. Our brain is 40% made out of like seafood fat. And it's essential that we get those. So they're smart fats. And I think the third group would be like spices and herbs. That they're anti-inflammatory, they block oxidation, antioxidant potential. They make your food taste fantastic. So I'm both a physician, nutritionist, and I did a chef internship. I want food to taste fantastic, and more spices and herbs. It's a win-win for your brain, and it's really good for our flavor. So my favorite ones would be like Italian herbs, especially rosemary, probably has the best studied results, and curry spices like turmeric, with the extract curcumin. Those would be my key foods I want people to add and eat more of.
I'm into turmeric, and even more turmeric, though I haven't tried putting it in my yogurt. You were brave.
Well, that's probably the easiest way is to do a little curry spice in your yogurt, put turmeric in your yogurt. Yeah. But it's a challenge. The studies would suggest we're looking for 500 to 1,000 milligrams of the extract curcumin every day. That's 3 tablespoons of turmeric. So you could do it, but a lot of people are going to struggle with that. When I lived in India, I worked in Indian hospitals doing volunteer work before. I had curry for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's probably the only time I approached 3 tablespoons of turmeric every day.
And your skin was probably glowing for it.
I think it was. Actually, it was. I agree with you.
So let me dive into a few of the food categories here real briefly. Then we'll move on from this.
Okay.
But first off, I'm a vegan/vegetarian. My wife sneaks some things in on me on occasion. So where do I want to go to get my omega-3s?
Well, you can get seaweed extracts with DHA. It's awesome. So notice I said not fish oil, but seaweed. We want seafood, so seafood and fish don't make it. They actually get it from the seaweed themselves. So you could eat a cup of seaweed every day, like in a Japanese restaurant. I love that seaweed salad. That would be a way. Or you can easily get, DHA seaweed extract. That's a great way to get your long chain omega-3s. That's, I think, really the best way because the medium chain fatty acids don't have all the same benefits. So yes, I love people to eat ground flaxseed. I'm good with organic non-GMO soy, but I think your best source is long chain omega-3s. And so we're looking at seaweed sources, whether it's the real food or an extract. You don't have to eat the fish.
Thank you. And since you were mentioning seeds and before that nuts, talking about that, one of the things that surprised me is why not peanuts?
Well, peanuts are a legume and they don't have as many of those omega, the omega-9, the oleic acid. They don't have the same fatty acid composition. They do have more protein, but they're more polyunsaturated fats that are more delicate and more easily oxidized and become damaged. So So peanuts, I like them. I think they're a healthy snack, but I don't think they have the proven benefits. My favorite nuts would be almonds, pecans, walnuts, pistachios, hazelnuts, and macadamia. Those are my top 6 if you look at studies. And I don't think we have the same data for peanuts. So yes, I think that peanuts are a healthy snack, but they're not quite in the same class as the other nuts.
I like how some of the other nuts, pecans and in particular walnuts, in a sense, look like the brain as well.
They do. That's pretty cool that they really do look like little mini brains. And walnuts, probably have some of the best studied for your brain health. Of all the nuts, they probably got the most data on them that suggests that walnuts really are super good for your brain.
I love how nature does that. Things that look like that part of the body can actually be better for that part. So how much daily cocoa or dark chocolate should we be having?
Well, I'm looking at 1 to 2 ounces of dark chocolate. And of course, we're not talking milk chocolate here. We're talking like 74% or more. 80% is better. So higher is better, but it's got to be at least 74%, or I just call it candy. And cocoa, we're looking at in most of the studies where they actually did studies, people with mild cognitive impairment, and they randomized them to a drink without cocoa or with cocoa. They were using about 2 tablespoons a day. Now, here's a good point. Cocoa needs to be unprocessed. A lot of time, I think most of the cocoa we buy in the store has been processed to make it more palatable and easier for cooking. But that took out about 70 to 80% of the flavonoid benefit. These pigments that are the most benefit. So it's got to be unprocessed cocoa. And I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. I want to dive into green tea and coffee, or specifically, tell us about matcha tea and why it's so beneficial.
Well, matcha is, it's got special properties. They grow it more in the shade. It tends to, more often it's organic and carefully raised. But the way it's grown, and then it's pulverized. So a lot of the compounds in the tea, you lose them when you just dip with a tea bag. Whereas matcha, it's actually ground up and it's powderized. But matcha also has theanine. It has like 8 times more theanine than regular tea. So when you're drinking matcha tea, the monks used to like theanine because it would make them calm and focused. Not agitated from too much caffeine, which is a problem. You don't want to overdo the caffeine, and you get a lot, you still get some of those great catechins, EGCG compounds with the any tea, but especially with matcha tea, you get theanine, which is a brain enhancing agent. So I think there's a lot to be said for having a couple cups of matcha tea every day.
Fantastic. Let's talk about another drink. I used to live in France a long, long time ago, and we had these beautiful long dinners. We took our time, were fully present with the meal, and there was always red wine.
Yes. Well, it's in France, in the Netherlands, in New York City, worldwide. If you drink 1 to 2 glasses of red wine a day with dinner, it's been consistently shown to be protective for your brain. Now, that does not mean go drink a bottle, and certainly not more. That's harmful. It's what we call a J-shaped curve. A little bit is better than none. A little bit more, no added benefit, and a little bit more than 3 servings a day. Who are we kidding? That's not good for our brain. So, 1 or 2 servings of red wine a day. I think all the data supports it. But I think what you hear about is people talk about cancer with alcohol intake. But if you really get a good quality multivitamin, you're not B vitamin deficient, like you're getting your mixed folates, I think that gets rid of most of it. And at 1 or 2 servings a day, I don't think you get any cancer increased risk from red wine, but you do from the other alcohol forms. So sad to say, beer and hard liquor, I cannot really say there's a benefit to having 1 or 2 servings a day for your brain, and certainly not, there's a cancer risk. So red wine's definitely the way to go. And I loved what you said about that meal, that leisurely, you're enjoying the food, you're tasting it. It's not just a Mediterranean food diet, it's a Mediterranean way of eating, which I think is really healthy.
Yeah, it was, talking about the monks we talked about a minute ago, it's calming meal. It's a meal, in fact, the standard American diet, maybe it's not just so bad because of the badness of the food, but it's that if you're anxious, if you're hurried, if you're stressed out, and then you eat, then your microbiome is stressed out and anxious as it's trying to digest these foods for you as well.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you brought up microbiome because that's one of the essential 12 foods for your brain as well. We need probiotic foods. We need to eat fiber to nourish our gut.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get a probiotic source. So it's either live probiotic food,
Yep.
or we should be taking a probiotic food, supplement, because a healthy microbiome. Some people actually call your gut the second brain. There's this just like I said, there's a hard heart-brain connection.
Yeah.
There's also a very strong gut-brain connection. And a healthy gut really does help give you a healthy brain.
I love sauerkraut. I love kimchi. My all-time favorite is one that here in the West we consider pretty gross, natto.
Natto is a really good source of vitamin K2 as well. So, I mean, there's a lot, if you can appreciate it.
I do.
There's a lot to be said for natto because you're getting all those multiple diverse bacteria and microbes, as well as a nice dose of vitamin K2.
Beautiful. So let's talk briefly about some foods to avoid. What would you put as the top contenders or miscontenders, if that's the right word?
Yeah. So, well, if you were trying to damage your brain, the worst foods would be sugar and flour. Because it has to do with that glycemic load. How high does your sugar go after you eat them? As I said, the number one cause for accelerated memory loss. And the reason we're seeing 30, 40, 50-year-olds with cognitive decline today is because they're eating the wrong foods. What they mostly wrong is processed sugar and foods that have flour in them. I mean, honestly, if you were to take a bowl of sugar, a bowl of white flour, and a bowl of whole wheat flour, all of them have the same sugar load when you eat them. So I really would like people to avoid flour and sugar because they cause a sudden spike in blood sugar. Mm-hmm. They lead towards insulin resistance. And they also, they worsen all aspects of your health.
It's fascinating and it's ironic, and I'm going to pick on my dad in the most loving way here. If I put out, I don't know, and I would never do it, but if there was something out on the counter, pretzels, bagels, chips, something in that carb family, it doesn't have to be sugar. Put out a nice sweet juice though, and all of these things he will eat without even knowing that he's eating it, because the brain, or maybe it's the microbiome, the body is so addicted to these things. The exact things that our brain is saying, eat more, eat more, eat more, is the worst thing we can do. How do we start to break that addiction, particularly as people get older? I'm sure you've heard it in your clinic a lot. My dad would say it if he was here with me. He would say, at my age, it's very hard to change, Michael.
Well, I would say, Dad, you could transform your life. You can transform your brain. You could be sharper, quicker, more productive, and you could prevent memory loss, or you could just finish yourself off. I mean, so for people with early mental, decline, cognitive decline, and I think you actually hit the nail on the head in that it is addictive. And you're not going to be able to just eat a little bit. You basically have to give it up. But honestly, within a week of giving up sugar and flour, most people are like, wow, within a week, they'll say, and I hear this a lot, I forgot how great I could feel. I'd just forgotten. So, I mean, that's worth a lot. Would you like to feel fantastic? Because here's the thing. Most people are probably like your dad. It's been this gradual decline over years, right? It's not sudden. It wasn't one day to the next. So he may not have even noticed the difference over time. So, but you're having to say, take a challenge. That's what I'm trying to do. Give people a better brain challenge. For just a short period. Try giving it up, add these other foods, do the other steps, and experience the difference. And the overwhelming results are, wow, I didn't know I could feel this good.
Woohoo! So let's talk about a few more of the other toxic foods, and we're going to talk more about helping the brain. What's wrong with sweeteners, and particularly, okay, Mom, it's your turn. I love you so much. She picks up the pink sweeteners and says they're not really bad for you.
Well, a lot of the sweeteners, especially like Splenda, the yellow packs, hurt your microbiome. It's chlorinated sugar. So you're literally chlorinating your intestinal tract and killing off your healthy microbiome. That's devastating to your brain. All of them are chemical impacts. So, the only sweetener I'm kind of really okay with would be stevia. I don't think you're going to lose any weight you don't lose weight either. Your brain figures it out that you tried to trick it with no calorie sweeteners, and it increases, it actually blocks leptin activity in the brain and increases appetite. So you're not going to lose any weight with sweeteners. You're almost better off. I hate to say it, eating the sugar or having the real sweetened stuff. Almost might be better than the sweetened fake chemical stuff. So really, we want to give it up. There's this really cool study they did on kids to show you how bad sugar is and how addicting it is. They blindfolded kids and gave them food like blueberries, and they couldn't taste what it was. They had no clue.
Wow.
They took all the sugar away for a week, and they tried blindfolding and popping food in their mouth, and they're like, oh, obvious, that's a blueberry. They could figure it out. But people have lost their flavor for food because they're so used to overly sweet. Think about it. A typical soda is 7 teaspoons of sugar. If you put 7 teaspoons of sugar in a glass of water, you probably couldn't even drink it. Like, yuck. How do they make that stuff taste good? I'll admit it tastes great to have a soda, but I don't touch them.
The last time I can remember having a soda, I had just finished. It was a good long run, and we'll get into activity in just a little bit here. I don't remember. It's probably a good 20 miles off on the trails, and I remembered when I went out, I ran past a vending machine at this national park entrance, and on the way back, I'm finishing my run, and I'm like, oh, it would be so great to have a Coke, and this is somebody who I don't eat the sugar, and I'm not used to the sweeteners, and I went and I got that Coke, and I started chugging it. And I threw up all over the trail. My body said, this is not food.
No,
it doesn't belong in me.
Reject. Push the eject button. That was smart.
So let's talk of another few to eject. Partially hydrogenated and hydrogenated fats, trans fats.
Well, that's just embalming fluid. No. Trans fat, hydrogenated fat. Just embalm yourself. Get it over with. So, if you're trying to commit suicide, that is definitely the way to go. Eat a lot of sugar, hydrogenated fat. That's what Twinkies are made out of, and just get it over with. Might as well take up smoking, too.
Well, I've actually heard that about fats. Even things like olive oil, if we cook it at a high temperature, if that's been in a deep fryer for a while and you have it, you might as well have a pack of cigarettes.
Oh, yeah, you can convert healthy fats when you fry them into transhydrogenated fats. That's true.
So let's talk briefly a little bit more about toxic fats, particularly animal fats, because one thing you talk about later in the book is pesticides. And I was fascinated that you said it's not so much of a concern in your produce. The biggest concern is in non-organic meat products.
Well, 40% of pesticides that are ingested by humans come from poultry and meat, and about 40% come from dairy. 10% come from fruit and vegetables. So if we really wanted to cut out the pesticides, yes, the dirty dozen fruit and vegetables, blueberries, apples, peppers, we should buy them organic. Yes, but most of them you don't even have to worry about very much. But your biggest source is, animals that are fed in feedlots with pesticide-enriched grains. They accumulate over time. They're given up to 6 hormones a day. There's, all the grains are sprayed with Roundup. Now, it's toxic. So either you should be vegetarian, or if you do eat any animal protein, it's really important to buy wild, pasture-raised, cage-free. Not only is it better for the animals, but it's a lot better for people too.
Thank you. So let's dive from there. Let's talk about a few key nutrients in the brain. Earlier you were mentioning a multivitamin. Wonder if you can talk with us about the few best vitamins, even though one's technically not a vitamin.
Okay, so if I was to pick my top 5 things,
yes.
It'd be crazy to go without because it could injure your brain. I'd probably put the B vitamins on top, mixed folates, and B12. A lot of people take a cheap 1 a day kind of supplement, but they have folic acid, and 40% of people can't make the active form out of that. It doesn't convert.
Yep.
So it should be mixed folates, not just folic acid. And the B12 dose is completely inadequate for once people get 40, 50, they don't absorb it as well. And if they take antacid medicines, that really blocks it dramatically. So you need a bigger B12 dose. So
What kind of dose? I'm taking it under the tongue, the sub-Q. How much of that should I be taking?
Well, if you're doing sub-Q, probably 50 micrograms would be plenty.
Okay.
And especially if you're vegetarian. One of the, the two big, well, you know this, the two big deficiencies that vegetarians deal with is B12, but that's easily corrected with just a supplement. So I would think of at least 50 micrograms a day, and if it's sublingual and you let it sit there until it absorbs, I mean, you can't just swallow. Has to absorb, but a lot of them now have 500 micrograms, and that's all you need. You can it's a lot easier, honestly, and less expensive to just take a good quality multivitamin with mixed folates in like 200, 400, 500 micrograms. Then you don't even have to worry about, because you'll absorb, that'll just float across really well. And at some point, you should check a B12 level when you've been on it for a while, but 99% of the time you would be just fine, and 1% of the time you might need to take 1,000 micrograms a day. But you're right, the sublingual is better absorbed, but it's more expensive and it's more of a hassle. So B12, mixed folate, vitamin D. Yep. I mean, it's crazy to be vitamin D deficient, but most Americans are. So we need at least 2,000 up to 5,000, somewhere between 2,000 to 500 a day to go to good level. So mixed folates, B12, vitamin D. Up next would be magnesium. 70% of Americans are magnesium deficient. You get it from seeds, nuts, green leafy, beans and legumes are a good source. 70% of people don't get it. Magnesium helps prevent migraines, muscle cramps, constipation, improves your blood sugar and your blood pressure. But it also helps the connection between brain cells. All these brain cells, each of them has hundreds, thousands of connections with other brain cells. And those connections are biochemical. They're magnesium dependent. We need magnesium to improve brain speed. So a good magnesium source. And then I would say a probiotic. You need a probiotic. You need eating probiotic food and fiber every day or taking a supplement. And if I had to say a sixth thing, I'd throw in curcumin.
I love it.
Turmeric.
So
those would be my top 6.
As a heart doctor, you can appreciate this. And I was on a high quality magnesium, but I've had just minor weirdness on the heart for years, just occasional. I had it checked out years ago with a Holter monitor, and no big deal. But I started this fall saying I'm going to be, I really want to get into the best running shape I've ever been in. And so what I'm doing as part of my recovery protocol is almost every day I take an Epsom salt bath.
Okay.
And guess what?
Which is magnesium.
My heart feels better than ever. Any of the weirdness completely and totally gone, and I'm convinced it's the magnesium.
Okay, when people have arrhythmias, the first thing I always check is their magnesium level, because 70% of people are low. I've had patients come to me who are on toxic cardiovascular drugs for life-threatening arrhythmias. It turned out they were magnesium deficient. They didn't need the cardiac drug. They just needed to get magnesium, and it all went away.
Awesome. So real briefly, what can you tell us about fish oil and what's wrong with most fish oil in the U.S.?
Okay, so that's a really good question, because 90% of fish oil in the U.S. is rancid. It's not processed properly. It's not good quality. It would actually be illegal in Europe, Australia, or New Zealand. They wouldn't even allow it to be sold. But, here consumers have choice. So, and manufacturers have the right to sell it, whether it's bad quality or not. So bad quality fish oil, 90% of fish oil sold, would maybe be rancid. I mean, it's a simple test. I mean, the complicated way is to do extensive testing and look at lipid peroxide levels. The easy way, stick a needle in your capsule and taste a drop, and it should taste pleasant. It should taste like eating wild, good quality salmon in a restaurant. If it tastes bad, yuck, it's rancid, throw it out. So that's of all the supplements, I think the quality issue is most important for fish oil. So that's one. Two is the dosing. A lot of times, there's long chain omega-3s, but they take out the two primary best ones, EPA, DHA. They pull them out, they sell them to a pharmaceutical company, and they sell the fish oil with removed DHA, EPA, and it's still got omega-3s. Well, that's not very effective. So I'm looking at least 1,000 milligrams of EPA DHA a day, and that's not rancid. And, that's really, I think, the goal. And then if you're vegetarian, I think there's probably less need if you're vegetarian, to be honest. You're less inflamed if you're not eating animal protein. So probably 500 milligrams of DHA would be plenty.
Fantastic. Let's switch to the body and movement. How important is movement for our brains?
Well, at least from data from our study where we looked at what predicts brain speed, processing speed, brain function, fitness was number one. And there's two types of fitness, and they're equally important. Aerobic activity, where you get your heart up and you sweat and huff and puff. How fit are you is important aerobically. And number two is strength training. Muscle mass is really good for your brain. And both the muscle mass and aerobic activity lower and reverse insulin resistance. That's part of the mechanism. And it's never too late. We know that if you took an 80-year-old and you randomize them to exercise where they do aerobic and strength training, their brain will literally enlarge. And if you take an 80-year-old and you make them inactive, their brain will shrink. So think about that for a difference in impact from activity. So, and it's not about the minutes. I mean, our data showed no relationship between how many minutes people spend per week. It's all about how fit you are. So it's about an intense workout for your aerobic, and actually it takes less time, and adding strength training too. It's those two combinations that are super beneficial.
Fantastic. My wife was sick for several years when we lived on Maui. She got mold toxicity poisoning. We had to get her back onto the mainland, get her out of that environment, and get her healed. One of the things that flipped her on switch, we started doing aerobic, gentle activity. But when I got her to the gym and we started a regular routine on weights and she started putting muscle back on, it seemed like her brain fog lifted and the body, I don't know if it hormonally flipped the on switch as it went into a muscle building mode.
Well, the sweating probably helped remove some toxins. It probably helped her detox better and get some of them out. Obviously, that change from a super and humid environment probably helped with mold. But activity, I mean, it's so powerful for your brain. We've noticed that when people really add a good exercise program, it can improve their cognitive performance up to 30%.
How important is doing something like counting your daily steps?
Well, so where do you start? You look like you're working out and you're fit. For you, doing 10,000 steps a day may not be optimal. But if you take the average American who's hardly doing anything, I think step counting is an excellent way to start. That's a super great start for someone who's inactive. Aim to, up your steps gradually, but the goal should be to get to about 10,000 steps a day. There's a huge brain benefit to achieving 10,000 steps every day. And then after that, you get more benefit by adding strength training and doing some interval training where you actually really push it for 1 minute intervals at a time and get your heart rate up.
If somebody's checked with their doctor and make sure their heart is okay, is the intensity good for us?
Yes. Now, but you said it properly. At least in the Better Brain Solution book or whenever I talk about this, I always say, to get moving steps, most people can just start upping their steps gradually over time. And, the national public health goal is to get to 10,000 steps a day. So that's pretty easy. But yes, I mean, technically, you should check with your doctor before you make sure you're safe. You don't have like ridiculously high blood pressure or other issues before starting an intense exercise program.
Thank you.
Very good point.
Let's talk about calming the brain, and maybe we can even talk about meditation here.
Okay. Well, so of our pillars, people often ask me, which pillar is the most important? Exercise, nutrients, food, stress management. And I say, well, if you're going to climb a ladder with 4 legs on it, you got to go 20 feet in the air. Which of those 4 is the most? They're all important. In stress, so you could eat well, meet your nutrient needs, work out. And if you're stressed out of your gourd, your brain's going to shrink. It's not going to be enough. So stress management is just an essential part of having a healthy, functional, sharp, productive brain. So here's the problem. And I like purpose and challenge. I want all of us to be pushing ourselves. We want stress in the short term, but we need to proactively manage it. because stress does give us that purpose. So when you accomplish something, like if you have a podcast and the show goes like awesome, I mean, you feel fantastic, right?
Absolutely.
That's good for you. But if you're constantly stressed, you feel overwhelmed, your cortisol levels rise, and cortisol does several bad things. It shrinks your bone and muscle mass, raises your blood sugar, it makes you grow more plaque, and it shrinks your brain. It literally shrinks the memory center of the brain. So high cortisol is a bad thing. So how do we lower that? I mean, there's many things we need, but I mean, some of the keys for me are a good workout to burn off tension, a good solid night's sleep, adequate, good quality sleep. And we need to proactively plan something like meditation every day, so that where you actually calm yourself. And it's amazing that 10 minutes has really I mean, a lot of people don't realize it. They think, oh, I've got to meditate for an hour twice a day or something. Okay, that would be nice, but you can actually get most of the benefit. And if you're good at it, and that's the challenge, how do you get good at meditating?
Tell us more.
So one of the things we talked about before we started was heart math. So in my clinic, I do a test on all my patients, just like a blood pressure check. I ask them to try to be calm and meditate for 2 minutes and just be peace and calm and think of being gratitude and grateful and being in a happy place. And I look at their heart rate variability during this.
Oh,
and
cool.
Some of them are like totally agitated. And they get frustrated trying to meditate because they never really actually get calm. So it's pretty, and their score is just like red when it should be green as in calm and relaxed. They're like totally red, agitated. So there's a feedback tool called Heart Math. You can get it on your phone if you got a smartphone, and you put a clip on your ear and it looks at your heart rate, and your heart rate should have this nice smooth variation over time when you're relaxed. And if you're wired, it's just flat, and we can see the difference. So I do that in my clinic, and it's a really powerful tool to help people meditate effectively and teach them how to get calm and relaxed at the same time.
Fantastic. So it's biofeedback in a sense, so that you can watch and learn what your body's doing.
Exactly. Now, here's what people misuse it for. Some of them they'll have this device and they're like, it's a competition, and they're getting mad at their phone. Like the phone turning red is winning and they're losing. No, it's like the thermometer, you're just looking at, how am I doing? And if it's red, okay, think of something else. All right. So if you're agitated, try another thought, pick another place that makes you calm and relaxed, and then your cortisol levels plummet and your oxytocin goes up. I mean, it's just when you get good at it, I think people realize, wow, that was really helpful for me.
Awesome.
And it even improves. I mean, they've shown it increases not just health, but productivity as well.
How about walking in nature?
Well, I think anytime we're with nature, we feel more connected. I mean, so yes, to get out, walking outside, walking with a pet actually even has more benefit. There's that somehow connection with animals. So yeah, I mean, nature's awesome. Romance is really good for stress management too. Nothing wrong with that. And
I think you advised it 2 or 3 times a week, in fact.
Exactly. I think it really does. Romance, the program improves your blood supply, so it improves your romantic function for men or women. And having romantic relationships improves, raises oxytocin and lowers cortisol. It's really good for us. So, and fun. I think people have to schedule fun. A lot of people, when they get stressed out and depressed, it's just all work, nothing's fun anymore. They're just trying to get their tasks down, and life is a drag. We've got to schedule fun. It's like releases, again, oxytocin, the fun hormones, endorphins. So all of that, meditate, be with nature, get a good night's sleep. All of those are super important for having a better brain.
Sounds like if you have the opportunity, be in a less stressful situation with kids and be more childlike, in the moment, in the joy, in the experience of it.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, the connection with children is pretty strong. For some of my folks, I'll say, okay, imagine you're at the beach and the waves are gently lapping on the shore and you hear a few seagulls and the sand is warm and they're thinking, oh, I don't like the beach. It's gritty and it's sandy and it's too hot. And I say, okay, let's try something else. Think of a child, think of your baby sleeping. Think you're in the bedroom sitting comfortably in a chair and you're looking at your child sound asleep and they turn green on my heart map application.
Wow.
I mean, so there, I think you're right. When we connect with our kids and they're in a good mood,
I was putting that caveat in there subtly.
not when they're having a temper tantrum, but when things are in a good state, I mean, that's really calming.
Beautiful. What are a few of the key toxins we want to start avoiding right away?
Mercury, which you get from big mouth fish like tuna, grouper, swordfish, bass. I mean, those big mouth fish, they accumulate, they eat high in the food chain, they get a lot of mercury. So, I mean, either eat them seldom, not more than a few times a month, or just cut them out. You're better off eating lower on the food chain, to be honest. In salmon are big fish, but they have a small mouth. They eat really low in the food chain. So there's far less issue with wild salmon. And, shellfish are better. And seaweed has the lowest, level at all for your seafood. So that's one. But I think that one of the hidden toxins in the American diet today are nitrosamines. It's these chemicals they sprinkle on sandwich meats, deli meats, bacon, ham. And I mean, people don't realize that yes, the food lasts longer. And so these companies can make a bigger profit and it costs people less and it seems cheap. But not only we've known nitrosamines cause cancer for a long time. What's new is now we realize they cause insulin resistance and they're neurotoxic. They can injure the brain. We can actually give like rodents in a study Alzheimer's in a short time by feeding them the equivalent of what people get from eating bacon every day. Wow. So if you're eating these processed animal meats, absolutely, they should be organic, pasture raised, nitrosamine free. That's essential. And pesticides, if your pesticide levels are high, because you're eating a lot of animal protein from a feedlot, or you're eating the dirty dozen fruit and vegetables that are not organic, pesticides increase your risk for Alzheimer's by 350%. So if you either go vegetarian or if you eat animal protein, make sure it's organic, pasture raised, nitrosamine free. And for the dirty dozen, fruits and vegetables, make sure to buy those organic. It's not that hard. It's not even it used to be more expensive. I mean, yes, it's a little bit, but I mean, the difference now is not significant compared to the health impact.
Thank you. And to find the Dirty Dozen, do you have those listed on your website? I know you had listed like ewg.com or something, but are they on your website as well?
Well, at drmasley.com, drmasley.com, there's some resources and information for them as well.
Okay, fantastic. What about hidden BPA and plastic containers?
So those are actually blood sugar disruptors and hormonal disruptors. So cans, if you buy canned food, my wife cooks beans from scratch all the time. I'm more time efficient. I'll buy beans in a can, but I buy them BPA free. It only takes a couple servings per week from a soda bottle or a can to increase your diabetes risk by 20%. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. And phthalates we get from plastic wrappers and things cooked in. Absolutely, we do not want to heat, food in plastic in the microwave. We don't want food cooked in plastic containers. The last thing you want is, saran wrap over your food and heat it in the microwave. It'll like melt on it like cheese, so to speak. So plastics, I try to drink out of glass, not plastic.
So plastic water bottles, which obviously I'm hugely against for the environment, but you're saying that's not good as well.
Oh, from a health perspective, it increases your diabetes risk significantly. They're hormone disruptors, all those plastics. So drink out of glass, or stainless steel when you're drinking water. And I try to avoid, once in a while, if I'm in the gym, okay, if there's the only thing there is a plastic bottle, I'll do it on occasion, but I try to avoid it as much as possible. And so that's, I think, BPA-free cans, avoid drinking out of plastic or cooking in plastic. That really goes a long way to taking toxic chemicals out that harm the brain.
Thank you. Here's one my dad is good at, and I'm wondering if we can address for a minute or two. He is studying and teaching himself music and the piano, which he played as a kid. Can you tell us about things we can do to sharpen the mind?
Well, we want to have continuous learning. I mean, just like your biceps, when you work your bicep, it grows, right? When you do problems, your brain grows. If we don't have challenge, if we don't push ourselves with learning new things, your brain will literally shrink like a muscle that's not being used. So, I mean, learning a new language, if he learns a new language and uses it, you got to also use it.
Yeah.
That could delay the onset of Alzheimer's by up to 4 to 5 years. That's pretty substantial from just learning a new language and using it. Learning chess or Sudoku or some. Now, once you're really like good at bridge, you lose the challenge. So you want to keep learning new things. That is powerful. These games, like whether it's Brain HQ or Luminosity, they really do help. They can create problem solving, they can target. So I think more and more, I'm really thrilled to hear that your dad's working on learning. Sounds like for your dad, the biggest issues are getting the sugar and flour out, adding the right foods, maybe boosting his activity. I'm really happy to hear about him, what he's doing with learning new things. That's really helpful.
Thank you. And for yourself, I guess in medical school, you started playing the flute. And one would say, where did you find the time to do it? And I'm guessing it actually helped your mind to give you more focus in all your activities when you did take the time for it.
Well, you're right. I mean, I would take my most difficult class that I had to study for. And I started playing flute in college and into medical school. And I would do my 30 minutes of music lessons each day right before my more difficult class. And I was convinced that I could hammer through that material a lot faster, memorize faster, process the information faster if I did it either after a physical workout, like going to the gym, or after a session playing music. That was when I was the quickest of the whole day. So I tried to actually pick my most challenging activities and make sure to do them after either my workout in the morning or my flute playing in the evening.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So where can people go to find out more, to find your book, and even to take a brain quiz?
Well, you're going to have the quiz. So we've talked about offering a quiz. How do people assess how they're doing? I think we have a really simple tool, 1 to 2 minutes, 90 seconds about, to go through, answer 10 questions and get an idea. How's your brain doing? And no matter what your score is, I want people to know that they can do more to improve their brain. So if your score is great, you can still make your brain better. I still want you to follow the 5 steps. And if you show, okay, you've got early signs of cognitive decline and losing some function, triple, quadruple more important for you to take action now. Here's the thing, by the time you have substantial symptoms, your brain's already shrunk. So don't wait. Take steps to improve your brain now so you don't have that. And the quiz is a nice start. And as a bonus, if you take the quiz, I give them my free Better Brain shopping guide, the 12 foods they should buy at the store every time they go, and the 12 foods to avoid that hurt their brain. So foods to add, foods to avoid as a bonus for taking the quiz. You mentioned the book. Well, the book's available, Better Brain Solution, wherever books are sold. And, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, books, a million. So wherever books are sold, they can get it. It comes out January 2nd, but you can always pre-order. And I have when they take the quiz, I'll have a whole Better Brain challenge to get people a jump start to have a better brain in 30 days. We'll get them started to improve their brain performance.
Fantastic. So for everybody, come on over to InspireNationShow.com and we'll have that quiz for you. I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much for sharing on that. If I were to take off, I don't want people leaving the show today without doing something, taking action. So if I was to take my coaching hat, put it on you, what one thing would you have people do starting today?
Whoa, what one thing? So here's my approach. I like to think, so of the 5 steps we've given people, I would say, where is the easiest? I like to make this easy. What's the easiest step you could take? It could be cutting out one of those toxin sources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're eating out of BPA lined cans, stop. If you're cooking with plastic, stop. That might be really easy. If somebody else, they could say, I'll eat more, green leafy vegetables, colorful vegetables, berries and cherries. I'll start there. I like people to pick what's the step that you can add the easiest and do it, and then add another one and add another one. And when you put them together, it's synergistic. You get a lot more benefit by adding all of them. When you only add one, you'll have some improvement, but you're on the right track. When you put them all together, it's synergistic. It's much more powerful than if we just did one step. But you're right, you got to start somewhere. I always, myself, if you asked me, I would focus on food. I'd cut out the sugar and flour, and I'd be focused on eating more vegetable, fruits, beans, and nuts. Boom. That would be my first step. More vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts, less sugar and flour. That's where I would go. But I like people to make that decision themselves.
If you were a parent, where would you go to start with their kids?
I'd do more vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts and cut out the sugar and flour. I like to start with food. You know, that I'm a food-oriented guy. I think food is the number one thing that predicts our health. But I just acknowledge that everybody's on a different path. And one thing, sometimes if you start with the easiest one, you can have success. That's where you should be.
Fantastic. What personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
I think, so one of the things that gives me the thanks for the work I do, I work really hard. I run a clinic. I'm doing all this work. But the thing that makes me feel like it's worthwhile is when people say to me, wow, I forgot how great I can feel. I feel fantastic. You give me my life back. I mean, for me, that's a wahoo moment that I feel really good about helping restore people's lives. And, what's more important than your brain? We can get a heart transplant. We can get a liver transplant. But if we lose our brain, we're a burden on everybody. So, the fact that I have data that shows you can improve your brain performance by 25 to 30% and be quicker, sharper, more productive, I'm so proud of that. And I just want to share it and make a difference in people's lives.
Woohoo! So any last words of wisdom before maybe we have time for a very brief meditation?
Okay, so the average person out there waits for something bad to happen before they make a change. But with your brain, that's a really bad strategy, because if you're not doing the right stuff, your brain's shrinking. And by the time you have symptoms, you could already have significant decline. So don't wait till your brain has shrunk. Take steps now to improve your brain function, feel better, transform your life for you and the people you love. You deserve a better brain. So why not take steps to make that happen today? Don't wait until you're already at cognitive decline.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Would you have a brief meditation you wouldn't mind sharing with people?
I would be happy to. Yeah, I would invite people to sit back in your chair, relax, let your arms drop, your shoulders drop, and just kind of let some of that tension unwind from the day.
Unless you're driving the car. Do this later if you're driving the car.
And for maybe like 2 minutes here, my goal is to have you go to a place where you feel safe, you feel loved, and you feel grateful for the life you have. So think of it, whether it's a mountaintop or a beach or your backyard. Pick a spot that you could be, and I invite you to gently close your eyes, sit up straight, let your shoulders drop, and start by just taking a few deep breaths. Breathe that breath in, and breathe in health and wellness and vitality with a deep breath. And then just let it flow and fall away, and that breath just pours out. And take another deep breath. And as you breathe in, just feel the energy pour into your heart, and then just let the breath fall away. And keep taking slow, deep breaths. And with each breath you take, I want you to feel the tension just melt away. that your face feels softer and your neck feels relaxed and your shoulders begin to drop. Your feet are planted firmly on the floor and you feel the weight of your sitting in your chair. And you keep taking slow, deep breaths in and out. And when you breathe in, you feel the energy, the vitality fill your body. And all the tension just pours out of you with each exhalation. Big breath in. And let it fall out. And your arms feel heavy sitting in your chair, but your spirit feels light. And with each breath, you feel more and more relaxed and calm. Breath in, breath out. And if you have thoughts that happen to pass in and out of your conscious, don't just let them go. You don't have to solve those problems today. When you have a passive thought come through, just let it pass through as you breathe in and breathe out. And with your next breath in, take a deeper breath. Breathe in and fill your lungs. And let the air just pass out of you as you empty your lungs. Big breaths in and out. And as we move back into awareness, you can feel the light from the sunshine coming through the windows or the light from the room coming through your eyelids as you continue to breathe in and out. And you become more aware of your surroundings and the love and the joy in your life and the health that you can enjoy now and for decades to come. So I invite you to open your eyes gently and gradually and to be present with where we're at and be grateful for the day we have and the love in our lives and the health we enjoy. And so let it be.
Woohoo! Wow. Thank you so much, Steven. This has been beautiful. This has been a treat. This is going to change people's lives.
Well, thank you for helping me share a message of transformation, of love, of getting the right foods, the right nutrients, activity, managing our stress, and putting that together to be sharper, quicker, more productive, to prevent memory loss, to prevent heart disease, and to feel fantastic. And all the best for your dad, too. I'm feeling really optimistic that you're going to help transform his life, too.
Thank you so much. As soon as we go live, I'm going to be getting him a copy of this. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the Better Brain Solution, and start protecting your brain today and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Steven.
Thank you. And I love working with you. I mean, it's an awesome message you've got. I can feel it from your heart. It's genuine. I enjoyed it and I really appreciate it.
thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!